Hello.
Hi,
Welcome back to another episode of Our Years. I'm Rima.
and this is Barry.
So, last week we spoke about the 30 lessons we've learned in our 30 years. And I think the effect of that is that when we date now, we know exactly what we want and we know what our red, amber, and green flags are. And so that's what we're going to be talking about today. We're going to be discussing our standards when it comes to our dating life and what our red, amber, and green flags are, and the golden question of whether our standards are too high.
This will be an interesting one, and obviously, disclaimer, this is purely just our opinion
Yeah.
and what we think are our green, amber, and red flags. So,
Yeah. I also love how we're both in black, like we're mourning. Which, given the topic, accurate.
makes sense.
So,
Okay.
I think a major red flag for me is when someone I'm dating is disrespectful to anyone in my inner circle. So that could be close family, close friends. If they're just disrespectful to any of them, I don't think I can date someone like that. And I think in the similar vein, if someone is also very insecure about my male friends, I think that's something I would find challenging to navigate because the guy friends that I have are people who've been in my life for decades. I've known them from like elementary school. So it's really hard for me to have to pick between the two. And so I think that's a red flag for me, dating someone who is very insecure about my male friends and is also disrespectful to any of my inner circle members.
Yeah, definitely. I think it comes from a place of like insecurity,
Mm-hmm.
and to some extent, like it means that they don't trust you enough.
Yeah.
And I think that's really important in a relationship, right? If you don't have trust, like what is everything else in the relationship?
Yeah, that's true. And I understand that, when you start dating someone, it takes effort to get to a place of that security. It's not going to be there from day one.
Right.
But I think if they were, I think the disrespect part is just like a non-negotiable, but the insecurity part, I think it can be worked through. But if it ever came that I had to pick between my friends and someone I was dating, I think, or my family, I think I would pick the former.
It's quite interesting. I always thought that that was the case. And I think, like, I don't know, just growing up, I've always been like, my friends, my family, and my partner or future partner will be on the same level. To me, they're like equals.
Yeah.
And I always thought that this was the case for everyone, but
Yeah.
it seems not the case. I think like when I chat to a lot of friends in recent years, I think they pick their partners over their friends.
I have friends, I think, of like both worlds. I've had friends who also like sort of deprioritized me
Right.
once they've gone to a
Right.
relationship. But I also have friends who've
Yeah.
made space for me
Yeah.
in spite of their relationship.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think I have both, but I think I'm closer to the ones who prioritize me as much as they prioritize
Yeah.
their partners.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, I mean it's not a good feeling when you get dropped by your friend because someone else has come into their life.
Yeah. In the same vein of insecurity, I think the other aspect is possessiveness. I feel like growing up in India, a lot of media that I saw, like movies, TV shows, any fiction, if the guy was very possessive, it was considered romantic, right? And I feel like only as an adult did I realize how toxic that was.
Right.
Even now, there's so many movies where this guy will just chase the girl and like cut her off from like all these other people,
Yeah.
and that's considered romantic.
Yeah, I think that's interesting, like that you brought this up. I think in general, like our idea of romance really comes from like what we are exposed to in like media, right?
Right.
And it's so interesting because culturally, like that is the case for like maybe India and maybe in Taiwan as well, where in Asian culture, if you feel like you possess this person or the other person feels like you possess them, it's almost like they love you so much
Yeah.
that they're doing all of this for you and they care so much for
Yeah,
you.
yeah.
I don't think that that's an accurate representation of what love is.
Yeah, no, it's not. So, yeah, I think that's possessiveness, and is also like an outcome of insecurity. So,
Right.
if someone doesn't work towards that and it's just like a pick me or pick your friends or pick another guy friend,
Yeah,
I don't think I can deal with that.
yeah, that's true. Fair point.
Yeah. What's a red flag for you?
One of the red flags I think for me is codependency. I think like that also sort of ties in with what you were saying about like movies being controlled by someone or like being in the possession of someone.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think in Asia, or at least in Taiwan, like codependency is pretty common. I think once you get into a relationship, it's as if like your friends don't matter anymore. To be fair, right? Like just trying to be objective here. I think when you are in a relationship or when you're married and you have kids, right, that's your responsibility. And so when you prioritize, if your kids are like not doing well, you know, like you prioritize your kids and your family, I think that's totally fair, right? But you still, that's provided that you still make time for your friends. But going back to codependency, I think like to me it's such a red flag because it's as if your whole world just revolves around one person. And I think the danger of that is that if things don't go well and you end up breaking up, it's as if your whole world falls apart, right?
Yeah.
Because you don't know anything else. You don't have friends anymore. You don't have your own opinions anymore.
Yeah.
And you don't know what to do with your life anymore because you spend so much time there.
Yeah, I feel like you don't know how to be by yourself.
Right.
You just can't spend time with yourself, and you have to be with this other person.
Yeah.
And that's so unhealthy.
For sure. I think like one of the greenest flags or like one of the most important things in a relationship is that two people are happy with the life that they've built separately, and then coming together, they make it even better, like by lifting each other up. Obviously there's like compromise and things like that, but you're still your own person at the end of the day.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. I think I've seen a lot of relationships where when after it's ended, like people just don't have any community
Right.
after that, and then they realize the importance of community, and it's a bit too late then
Yeah,
to start
right,
building it.
right.
So yeah, I've seen that too.
And I think for them it's especially hard to heal, or it takes longer for them to heal
yeah.
because they don't know anything else, and
Yeah.
it's as if they have to build a new life by themselves.
Oof, yeah. I hope I never get there.
Yeah. No, just don't do codependency.
Don't do it.
Just don't do it.
Problem solved.
Problem solved.
Other red flag for me is that if someone I'm dating treats me like their unpaid therapist, it's really infuriates me. I think a lot of guys think that that's a sign of vulnerability by telling you a lot of their trauma stories and sort of trauma dumping on you. But that's actually not the case. I think that takes time to build up. And I think you need to have a certain level of emotional maturity to know when to start sharing certain aspects of your life with someone, and not expecting the other person to sort of, like I said, be your therapist
or
and
like
just
heal you.
unloading on them and expecting them to heal you.
Right.
I think you need to decouple dealing with your trauma and dating, and you can't expect someone that you've just started dating to sort of come into your world and magically heal all your problems. I don't think that's going to happen. And so I think that's a red flag for me, when someone just treats me as a sounding board.
Do you think it's maybe subconscious? Like they don't know that they're doing that, but I think the reason I ask that is because I feel like it's quite a blurred balance, right? About being vulnerable with someone and sharing very detailed sides of you or sensitive sides of you that you don't share with other people, versus, you know, sharing too much and then expecting them to heal you, like you said.
Yeah, I definitely think it's subconscious. And I think that it's just there's so much at the surface of, in terms of aspects that they haven't healed from, that is just at the surface. So they're almost just waiting for someone to just like pour it out into. And I think that's the issue. I think you need to realize when you're doing that and stop, because I think that's also, it's too much for the other person on the receiving end also, right? Like maybe they don't have the emotional bandwidth to deal with. Like a lot of times that it's happened to me, I've not had the emotional bandwidth to be there in that capacity for this person. So yeah, I definitely think it's subconscious. And I think the issue is that in my past experience, previously when I was dating someone who I felt was doing a lot of trauma dumping, I wasn't very vocal in voicing that I didn't have the emotional bandwidth to deal with it. So I've learned from that. And so I think that's a red flag.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's at the end of the day, it's a balance, right? Like I think with anything, them telling you, you know, their their problems, I think maybe sometimes they just need a listening ear. But if they're expecting you to do more than that and, you know, give them advice on how they can heal,
Yeah.
that's not it.
Yeah, I think it's tricky because you do want them to be vulnerable and you
Right,
do want them to share, but also you don't want to be like sucked into
Exactly.
this issue that they're dealing with, right? When
Yeah.
you're also so new in the relationship or you just started dating. So yeah, it is tricky. And I think it's a green flag when you're able to figure that out with someone. But if they're just like not taking feedback well, and then I think that's the red flag.
Yeah. Yeah. Do you think it's a green flag when you see on people's dating profile that they say they go to therapy?
Yes. But then also, just okay. I don't think it's I said the yes with too much gusto.
Yeah. And too quick, like you didn't like.
No, but I think a lot of people also use therapy as a crutch.
I was just about to say.
As like, oh, I go to therapy, so I'm allowed to be like this and not like improve. There are people who go to therapy. There's like so many aspects to it, right? Sometimes there are some therapists that are just bad, who sort of enable
Yes.
this for
Yes.
you know, people going to therapy, and they enable this like this behavior.
100%.
So there are bad therapists. So yeah, just being in therapy is not a green flag.
That's
But-
exactly the reason I asked.
But the fact that you're willing to work on it is a green flag.
I don't know about that. And the whole reason I asked you that question is because, you know, I've been on a couple of dates where, you know, the guy is very quick to almost like emphasize that he's gone to therapy or that he is in therapy. It's almost as if, you know, when you're on a like when you're writing your resume for like a job interview and you want to highlight all the key factors about you that you think that they want to hear. It's almost like that. And I don't know. It's kind of off-putting for me. I think it should be like, you know, in conversation you can tell
It comes up organically.
right, that they've gone to therapy and they're working on something. It's not like, oh, this is a box I check because I'm doing it and here you go. It's on my resume. So, you know, I'm great and all.
Yeah. No.
But to your point, I appreciate that, you know, people have the self-awareness to realize that they do need to go to therapy, that they do want to improve themselves, you know, in certain aspects of their life. So
Yeah.
that in itself is a green flag,
Yeah.
but not the going around telling people I go to therapy.
So this guy just sat down. He's like, "Hi, I'm Dave. I go to therapy."
No, not like that.
But it came up very unnaturally.
It just came up in conversation and he's like, yeah, I go to therapy, this and that. Maybe not too forced, but I feel like in conversation you should be able to tell if someone goes to therapy.
Okay.
But yeah, back to your point, second point is that I also agree with like bad therapists and some therapists also encouraging bad behavior, right?
Yeah.
It's interesting because I feel like sometimes people, you know, and I don't know if it's like the therapist that is doing this, but maybe sometimes they say, oh, it's okay that you're doing this, and it almost validates the person
Yeah.
to continuing doing
Yeah.
bad or having bad behaviors.
Yeah. No, that's definitely a thing. Bad therapists are definitely a thing that enable this behavior, right? So, yeah.
A red flag for me, and it's a concept that I think I only learned about when I moved to the States, not because, you know, I didn't know about it, but now it has a name, is love bombing. I think like once I learned the definition of this, I was just like, oh wow, it's actually been around a minute.
Yeah. Just as a label now.
Right. And we were looking up the definition of what it is. And it's basically like throwing someone with a lot of like love and affection and attention very early in the relationship or getting to know someone, and using that as a way to leverage manipulation. It's quite interesting because, yeah, like I said, you know, it's been around. We just didn't really call it something, or people didn't really think that was common. But really it's a red flag. And at the beginning it might be like all like rosy and you might feel really loved because, you know, you're getting all this attention and affection, but once you realize how they use that to kind of manipulate and try to influence you, I think it's quite dangerous.
Yeah. Have you ever been love bombed?
I don't think so. Well, I don't think I would define it as love bombing, but I think that both of us were just very attracted to each other. And so at the very beginning, it was just like a lot of love and affection. And it quickly turned into dependency. because you're so used to that. And then so later on in the relationship, later on when we got to know each other better and things were falling more into like a routine, and we had like our work and, you know, life going on, and it felt like I was getting less attention. I think that was kind of like, oh my gosh, like, is something wrong? Why is he showing me less affection, less attention, etc.? And that's when like issues started popping up. Yeah, so I don't know if that's the right definition of like love bombing, but I felt like, you know, just too much attention and affection at the very beginning of a relationship is quite dangerous, in that you haven't really established a ground or foundation to a good and healthy relationship.
Yeah. One of my favorite quotes is from this show called BoJack Horseman, where one of the characters says that when you're wearing rose tinted glasses, you don't see the red flags because the red flags just look like flags.
Correct.
I love that.
Yeah.
I don't think I've experienced love bombing either, but I dated someone who was so lavish with his attention to me and his love for me right at the beginning that when I didn't have as much capacity to give it back, it was almost like oh, but I'm doing this for you, why can't you do it for me? It was very like, it has to be tit for tat.
Yeah, interesting.
So it was almost like entitlement. It was love entitlement.
I don't know. Maybe I don't know if I would use entitlement to define that. Maybe it's more so like establishing an unrealistic expectation at the very start of getting to know someone.
Entitlement.
Another red flag for me is not respecting boundaries from the start. Going back to your point about rose tinted glasses, right? I think when you're in that sort of mindset and you see things from rose tinted glasses, I feel like it's very easy for us to be very lenient with our boundaries. You'll say, him doing this doesn't mean anything. Like, oh, it'll be okay. It's just, you know, this is a once off and next time it'll be okay. And then it's just like a compilation of that, resulting into later on you fighting over something about like them not respecting your boundaries. So I think from the very beginning, like, you should just be aware of what your boundaries are and be very strict with them, because giving them a once off now
Slippery slope.
Is a slippery slope. Correct. Yeah. While I was also dating in the past few years, or have gone back into the dating scene, I think learning about narcissism is a eye opener, I guess.
It's wild to me that you've had to experience that only in like your late 20s.
Well, maybe because I just had really healthy relationships.
Yeah, that's good. Yeah, I think that's also a sign, or it's like a sort of premonition of what your relationship with this person is going to be like, right? They're not going to wake up one day and change their ways unless something really drastic happens. So if you go into it thinking it's amusing that he does that in the beginning and thinks he's going to be better later, then that's on you.
Yeah. I think along the same lines is, you know, because they're so self-absorbed, when they talk about their exes or their past relationships, they speak very poorly of their exes. I think that's a reflection of them thinking that everything is a wrongdoing to them.
Yeah.
And so they can only say bad things about their exes. I think that's also a red flag for me.
That's interesting that you tied narcissism to that, to someone speaking poorly of their ex, and that they think that it's something that happened to them and they take no ownership of it. That's interesting because I hadn't thought about it like that. But yeah, I think it is in bad taste when someone does constantly bitch about their ex. This happened to me recently where I was dating someone and he spoke very poorly of his ex. And I didn't think much of it while I was dating him because I think I was into him, but I saw it only rose-tinted glasses, and I saw it only post fact that. And I was like, how is he talking about me now, right? Yeah.
For me, that's exactly it. And I think that applies to my friends too, right? Like if someone's speaking poorly of someone else in front of you, the likelihood of them speaking poorly about you when you're not in the room is very high.
That's true.
To me, right? Because it's kind of a reflection of them and how they viewed or valued that relationship, right? Every relationship, I think you gain something out of it. Doesn't matter how it ends, right? It can be a very terrible ending, but at the end of the day, you still get some sort of lesson out of it.
Yeah.
And that should be the highlights of that.
Yeah, I think that's the converse of that is that the green flag is when they're able to reflect on what went wrong in their past relationship and talk to you about that.
Yep, exactly.
Yeah. Wasn't that one of your Hinge prompts?
Oh, one of my Hinge prompts was, drinks on me if you can tell me something you learned from your past relationship.
Did anyone give you a good response?
A lot of people actually responded to it, but very few with good responses. But I appreciate that people did some reflection, you know. A lot of the reflections were mostly like them saying that they know now what they want, which is a good thing.
Yeah.
Or very few left really good impressions on me.
Okay.
But it was a good prompt. So pro tip for Hinge.
For engaging. Well, I guess I
Right.
don't need pro tips for Hinge anymore.
Because now that you're back.
Yeah. Fun fact, I have a lifetime ban on Hinge, which is wild because when I first got the notification that my profile was under review, I had literally deleted Hinge for the longest time. And I downloaded one time, I think a week back at dinner, because Barry was like, okay, it's time to get back. And then we literally made my profile and we went to bed. And the next morning, I got a notification saying that I was banned.
That is wild.
And I thought it was funny, right? I was like, it's obviously one of their models has picked up some issue. It's a joke.
Yeah.
And then a week later, I got a mail saying that I have a lifetime ban on Hinge.
That was after you appealed.
Yeah, I appealed because I was like, can I see proof of any of these user reports?
Right.
But they said that they have to protect the privacy of the people who are reporting me.
And that's all fine. But
Yeah. So, yeah, I have no proof of why I was banned.
Wow.
But I have a lifetime ban on Hinge now.
this is rejection is redirection. I've been telling her. So rejection is redirection is one of the 30 lessons. If you haven't watched that episode, it's our previous episode. But going back here, I think that I keep telling Rima that this is a sign from the heavens that she needs to pivot to a different dating app, and maybe her guy is on a different dating app, like Coffee Meets Bagel.
Wow.
Please sponsor us.
Yeah, you're really plugging Coffee Meets Bagel.
And it's funny because I didn't like the app for the longest time.
Yeah.
And the user interface was not doing it for me.
Yeah.
But then later on, the people that I met on Coffee Meets Bagel are very genuine, and that's why I vouch for it now.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, we spoke about how it's a red flag when someone speaks very poorly of their ex. But I think an amber flag for me is when someone lacks any previous long-term relationship experience.
I think I added that too. Mine was like having no whatsoever lack of past relationships. Like they aren't able to actually hold a relationship or start a relationship with someone.
Yeah. I think, look, everyone's first relationship has a different timeline. I don't think that's the issue. I think the issue is that there's going to be a learning curve when you're seeing someone who has never had a long-term relationship in the past, and then you need to ask yourself whether you're okay going on that journey with them or not. And I think that's why it's an amber flag. I think it depends on the person that you're dating
and their history and background and like their motives for not having a long-term relationship.
Exactly.
Right.
And why they want it now.
Yes,
right.
Right.
Yeah.
Right,
So that's why I think it's an amber flag, because I think it can evolve into something good, but it just depends on where you are with respect to your life,
Yeah.
and where they are and their motivations for, it not happening in the past and why they want it to happen in the future with you.
Do you think that it's an amber flag for you now, or it's a flag that you notice now because we're in our 30s and we expect them to have had enough time to explore these opportunities
Oh yeah,
for relationships?
it's definitely a function of time. It's only because
Right.
I'm in my 30s and I expect. I mean, I'm surprised when I meet people who haven't had a long-term relationship. So it's definitely a function of time.
Right.
But I've also heard very different responses as to why it's not happened, and I understand it.
Right.
So then that's why I think it's then, do I want to go on this journey with them?
What are some of the examples that make you feel like it's okay that they haven't had a long-term past relationship?
I think someone I was seeing did not have a long-term relationship in the past, and he told me about some women that he had dated in the past and why it didn't become a long-term relationship. And I'm not going to get into it because it's his story. But it made sense to me and why it didn't work out. I didn't think it was like he was the problem, right?
And so you thought that that was fine.
Yeah.
That's fair.
That being said, we did stop dating because he didn't know what being in a long-term relationship was like, and he was so uncomfortable
Right.
with expectations of communication and
Right.
you just turning up,
Yep.
that he was a really nice guy, but I just didn't think I wanted to go on that journey with him.
Yeah. Speaking of amber flags, I think one for me is being really busy. I think I appreciate someone who has their own thing going, you know, and is ambitious, and you expect ambitious people to be busy, right?
Yeah.
And have their own careers and their own personal lives and hobbies, but being really busy to a point where they don't prioritize making time for you or having quality time, that to me is kind of a red flag.
That's tricky.
Yeah, it is tricky.
Because you are attracted to them because of they have all this other stuff going on for them.
Exactly.
Right? And
Yep.
they're ambitious and you're attracted to that. But if they don't make time for you, then you don't have any foundation in the beginning to
Exactly.
base that relationship on, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
But for me, right, like a green flag is someone who prioritizes you and prioritizes spending time with you. But then again, I think this also goes back to love languages, right? Like if his love language is not quality time, and his love language is like acts of service or like everything else that is not quality time, and he's really busy, then he's going to do all those things that is not making time for you. It's not a reflection that he doesn't love you, because he's doing all those things that show love for him in his way. So I think it's just speaking about it and understanding it and setting expectations.
In a similar light, I think an amber flag for me is when someone I'm dating has a timeline for everything as soon as I start dating them. For instance, they are like, okay, we'll date for this many years, we'll get married in this year, we'll have kids in this year. It's so wild to me that people bring that up on the first date.
I remember when I first got you on the apps,
Got
right?
me on the apps.
Because
You had to, like,
Rima,
hold
for
me
the
down.
longest time, just did not want to get on the apps. And when you first started using it, I think one of the first people you dated,
Yeah.
the one guy was just like, I'm looking to get married within the next year.
Yeah, even before the entree came. And I was like, man, I wish you told me this before I ordered, because then I could have dipped, but now I have to sit through this whole meal.
Wow.
And yeah, and it was interesting because this guy told me that he wanted to have kids very quickly, but he had never been in a long-term relationship.
Wow.
And for me, I think kids, okay, look, people have different reasons for having kids, but for me, I think a kid would be a function of a relationship with someone. So if you've never dated someone or like had a relationship with them, how would you know you want to have kids with this person? So then this person is just dating to find like
Someone
a
to
mother,
have, yeah,
right, for his child.
right.
So that just was wild to me, that that's the intention and that's the timeline. And I don't want to date under that sort of pressure.
Right.
Yeah. So that's an amber flag. I think I put it in an amber flag because it's a function of where I am in life right now. Maybe in a few years that'll change for me, or maybe this person is able to like show me why that's the way to go. But this person did not. And that's why I think it's an amber flag, because it could evolve to anything.
Another amber flag for me, I think, is when the person you're seeing doesn't have a close group of friends or doesn't have a best friend. I think, okay, maybe not having a best friend is fine, but having a core group of friends, I think, is really important, right? I think humans are social beings.
Yeah.
As introverted as you are, you would still have a close group of friends that you go to, you know, for advice, for spending time with, and for like just getting different perspective, right?
Yeah.
To me, if you don't have that and you just kind of have people that you are acquaintances with, I
Right.
think that is an amber flag.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think if you don't have deep relationships, platonic relationships with other people, I also think that's an amber flag. And I think it's also in a relationship, what that means is that you have to be everything to this one person, right? And I think that's also how
yeah.
codependency starts. So
But that's also very not healthy, right?
No, it's not.
Yeah, you can't put all that emotional burden on one person.
yeah, that's a lot.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I hesitate to say burden, but obviously you share happy things with your partner too. But yeah, you have friends for different aspects of your life, you know, and you add value through their different perspectives, and having only one person to do all of that for you is a lot.
It is a lot. I think it is an unfair expectation on another person, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because if the other person has a full life and you don't, then you're almost going to start feeling neglected by it.
Right.
Right?
Exactly.
Yeah. So I think it's important for people to just have a full life by themselves.
Mm-hmm.
And a relationship, like you said, adds to that. It elevates your life.
Yep.
Right?
Yeah, for sure. So I think an amber flag is not having shared interests or hobbies. I think it's a balance. You don't need to do everything together. You don't need to have exactly the same hobbies and interests, but having some is important. And I think that's a foundation of like a friendship, which is needed also in a relationship, right?
Yeah, no, I agree. I'm smiling because one other thing in terms of having common and an amber flag for me is dietary restrictions.
I think that's so funny. You can't expect someone just to,
And hence, it's an amber flag, Barry. It depends on all these
give your
other nuances.
example. No, give your example.
Okay, so I recently dated someone who didn't eat sugar, and I get it. That everybody should be making that choice, right? Good for him that he was able to stick to it, and he was so diligent about it. But then sometimes I wanted dessert.
You eat your dessert.
I want to eat dessert with someone.
You don't need him to eat the dessert with you.
Hence the amber flag.
Hence having other friends.
Yes, exactly. Yes. So that's why it's an amber flag, because it would have been nice, but it didn't happen. But that wasn't like a major issue.
You can call your friend up to have dessert with. You don't need him to
So I finished the date and be like, okay, bye. But then I need to have a backup dessert friend who comes to just have dessert and then we end the night. I love that. You can be my backup dessert person.
He can also just sit and not eat the same whatever you're eating. He can be having like another craving, right? So that is not sugar.
But I think shared experiences with food is very important in a relationship. Previously, I did not care, but now I think shared experiences with food is an important experience to have with a partner. And so it's an amber flag. I'm still on the fence about where I feel about this.
We know how you feel about it.
But weirdly enough, it's sugar, but it's not like vegetarianism, for instance. Or maybe it hasn't happened yet and I haven't experienced that.
Right,
I've never dated a vegetarian, so I don't know what that's like. I think that's why I said it's an amber flag for me, because I don't think that is the case for me, but I'm still like undecided. And see, this was like an unserious example, so I don't know if it'll really be like it's not a deal breaker, but yeah, amber flag.
Yeah. It's funny when people talk about like red and green flags, because I think honestly like red flags are just the opposite.
The converse.
Yes, right.
Yeah.
And so when we were listing out our like color flags, I think we had a lot more green flags, and I think it's just us viewing the glass half full instead of half empty.
Yeah. Wow.
I know.
Growth.
Influence.
Okay. For context, Barry thinks that she's made me a positive person.
I think I have. You used to wake up in the morning so grumpy and I didn't know what to say to you. And now you wake up, you're like, Barry, what you doing?
Yeah, I don't know if it's a function of time or age or what it is.
It's a function of Barry.
Okay.
Yep.
But I have been less grumpy in the mornings.
Yeah, I feel like in general, and I was joking about the function of Barry, but I feel like you have become like a lot more happy. Not happy, less grumpy.
I feel like it's also because I start my day so early now. Like previously, I would start my day very late, but now I have to start taking calls like at 6 a.m. So my day just starts early.
But no, not like even on weekends, right? Like if you just like wake up and then like you roll out of bed. I remember when I first moved in with you and you would like just roll out of bed and you would go to your bathroom, and I was already awake, and then I would just see you go to your bathroom, and I just didn't know what to say to you. I was scared. I was just like, I don't know what is the right thing to say to you.
Wow.
Yeah.
That was a personal journey that you went on, because I wasn't thinking about this at all.
Definitely, it was a huge contrast. If I could like view you then, view you now, I think there is some sort of positivity infused into the way you wake up now.
Okay.
I know. Amazing. This is what 30s do to you.
They just make you more chill.
Make you more...
They make you a morning person.
I guess it does.
I don't think I'm a morning person.
I don't think you're a morning person, but you...
Less grumpy.
Yes.
Noted.
Yes. Which is good.
What are your green flags, Barry?
A green flag I look for, I think, is self-awareness and emotional intelligence. Someone who is just literate in that front, because I think it's really important.
Yeah, one of my green flags is just when someone is a hype man. It's so nice to have people on your corner who support you, especially during the lows, right?
Right.
But it's also so nice to like celebrate even the small wins.
Right.
I think I've had that experience in the past where someone I dated was such a hype man, and it just makes such a difference to how you go through life. And I definitely think that that's something that I want in a partner.
Yeah.
Yeah. It could be like silly it sounds silly, right? Like a hype man.
Mm-hmm.
But I think it makes a huge difference, especially I think as we've gotten older, we've had to navigate so many different experiences and learn new perspectives. And there's just so much uncertainty that when you have someone who gives you positive affirmation and gives you positive feedback and just like is such a cheerleader for you, it makes such a difference in how you go through life. I know why you're laughing.
Why? Why am I
Because
laughing?
words of affirmation is like bottom on my
Yes,
love
how did you
language.
know I was
I
listening to
know.
this?
I can read your mind.
I was like,
I
this
saw
woman
that
is
little twitch
such
of the cheek. And I
hypocrite.
knew. Yeah, I'm a hypocrite. That's true. I'm a Gemini. It's allowed.
Correct. No, it's not. She always uses this as a
crutch.
Yeah. To say
Yeah, how guys are using therapy, I'm using being
correct,
a Gemini.
Correct.
But yeah, I think it's so nice when someone roots for you. I've had the privilege of being in a relationship where I've experienced that. And once you have seen that, it's hard to not have that again, right? Yeah.
That's true. And I think it's not just like in your like daily life, right? It's also just like, I don't know, being a hype man for you and your girlfriends and your friends and your family.
Just everybody.
Marry me.
If you work in finance and you're a hype man,
that's all I need.
That's all you need.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think we're very privileged because we got to experience that. I dated someone who was just the biggest hype man, and you know, any like little thing that I told him, he just really celebrated and was just so happy for me, and it was very genuine.
Yeah.
I remember we went on like a date and he was taking like a video of me. I didn't hear him say this, but I was like walking down like the stairs and there was like sunshine. We were at the beach, and then he was like, "Wow, Barry, you look amazing." And you can just like hear his tone of voice, which is so genuine. And I have that on video, and I was just like, wow, if every person was like that for their partner, you know, it would make a world of a difference.
Yeah.
Yeah. And also like going back to like emotional intelligence, right? Like the lows are also really important to have like a hype man, because when you're going at the, or you're hitting rock bottom, right? If your partner is also, you know, in a negative space, it's really tough on the relationship.
Yeah. When you're spiraling and someone adds to that, it's really difficult to get out of it.
Yeah, for sure. And so having a hype man really is a
game changer.
Yeah. So going back to emotional intelligence, I think in all aspects of a relationship, that's really important, right? Like it really helps with like, you know, having good listening skills and having empathy and just understanding your partner, or trying to understand your partner. And that really helps when you're going through lows together in a relationship, when you're fighting over something. If you have good emotional intelligence, you kind of both take a step back to view the problem and talk through the problem together.
Yeah, I agree. I think a big green flag for me is having high EQ and being a good communicator. And I think communication doesn't just mean being able to be eloquent. I think it also means being a good listener, and then listening to what the other person is saying, being able to process it, and then communicate back to what they want to hear, right? And also at the same time being able to process your own emotions and feelings and being able to communicate that out so that your partner is not just second guessing or making head stories, right? Because life is hard enough. You don't have to be thinking for two people when thinking for one person is enough or hard enough. So, yeah, I think the combination of high EQ, where you're able to process your feelings or emotions and the other party's feelings and emotions, and then being able to communicate thoughtfully what you need and what you expect from them, and also give them what you need, which is really hard. I think that's the greenest flag.
Yeah, for sure. I think just like self-awareness, which comes with like high emotional intelligence, is the ability to like self-reflect and understand your own feelings. And I think once you understand your own feelings and you can articulate those, then it's like it helps with the communication that everybody talks about for being a factor in a good relationship. Yeah.
One of my friends was telling me that he's seeing someone who's very self-aware, that she fully understands what her problems are but doesn't do anything about it. So he's like, self-awareness without the motivation to do something about it is useless.
Yeah. So yeah, definitely. Like if you know all these things but don't do anything about it, that doesn't really do much.
Yeah. Okay. Another green flag for me is when a person that I'm talking to in the talking phase, they remember details about what I say. I know what you're going to say.
Girl, this is bare minimum. I think if someone is really interested in you, they want to get to know you, they want to understand you, they want to know the details about you.
No, they do. But then to be able to like just not have a conversation, but to be able to like remember things about you and then bring it and do something about it later, I think is a green flag. For instance, if I tell someone that I like, I'm like, there's a restaurant that I really, it's been on my list and I want to try. And then for a date or like a subsequent date, they make a reservation at that restaurant. I think that's a green flag.
No, I agree. Like, regardless whether it's bare minimum, I agree it's a green flag. And I think it's a sign of a really healthy relationship, right? Because you think about that person and you take them into consideration and you want to see them happy. And I think like wanting to see someone happy is the greenest flag, right? And that goes for like any sort of relationship. So yeah, I agree with you. Actually, yesterday at my party, a friend of mine brought something that I enjoy. So like just like in conversation, I think we were talking about like what my parents used to do, and we used to manufacture those cup jellies. And so he brought that as a gift for me yesterday.
That's so sweet.
It was so sweet. And it was just like small things like that, right? Like when people remember little details about you and then it later comes up.
To your point about bare minimum, I think it's interesting because a lot of stuff that I have on my green flag list is just stuff that I've had in the past, like I've experienced, and it just has been so long since I've experienced it that now if someone does, to your point, even the bare minimum, it feels like oh my God, it feels like a big moment.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, it's true. I was just thinking about the guy that bought me the jelly. I've seen the way that him and his girlfriend are, and it's such a good reminder that, you know, healthy relationships are out there. And it was such a good example to me that that is the sort of relationship I want. So I went on like a ski trip with them, and the girlfriend was in the bedroom freshening up for the day, and he was in the living room, and I stayed in like the loft area so I could hear what was happening downstairs. So he was like chatting to his friend, and we were talking about the previous nights when we were playing board games, and he was like, yeah, like my girlfriend is just so smart and it's crazy that she won all those games. Because just the way he was talking about her, I was just like, wow, it's so nice to see how healthy relationships are, and I really wish that for everyone.
Yeah. See, if you saw it more often, then it wouldn't be like if you saw it enough, then it becomes a bare minimum thing, right? But when you don't see it enough,
that's true.
That's why it stands out so much.
That's true. And that's why I'm reminding you that it's the bare minimum.
Girl, I'm banned on Hinge. Who am I dating?
It's true.
Yeah. You need to do your thing where you go on Hinge and find me other people.
Yeah. Speaking of which,
yeah,
I saw this guy on Hinge and I was just like, wow, this guy, his profile, everything on his profile, like likes dancing, enjoys this, enjoys that. Everything that checks off Rima's like checklist. Okay, I don't want to say it's a checklist, but just things she looks for in a man, right? And this guy had like really good like profile, and just he looked good in his like photos and just like good energy. And I was like, oh my gosh, I'm gonna set this man up with Rima. And I was like, it's on my profile, but you know what, let's do it. So then I was like, I messaged him and I was like, wild idea, can I set you up with my friend? I feel like you guys would be such a good fit. Surprisingly, he actually replied and he accepted, and he was like, are you being serious? I'm like, yes, let's do it. And he's like, okay, I'm down. And I immediately, when he said
green flag.
Down, green flag. I was like to Rima, oh my gosh, I already like this guy so much. Then he replied saying, you know, do I not get to see a photo? I'm like to him, no, let's just make it fun and not see photos. I will set you guys up. I'll give you a time, a place, and you both just pitch up at that time and place. And they both did. And they really hit it off.
What's wild is that this person was basically American Indian, but we were talking about where he moved from in India, and he didn't know anything about me, right? And he was like, oh, I grew up in this town, the same town that I grew up in. We were actually neighbors when we were kids. We went to the same school. Yeah, and we went to the same school.
Yeah.
And it's wild that I've not met anyone from my school. Just my own classmates I've barely ran into in the Bay Area.
And
but this man that Barry found on Hinge, who I'm on a blind date on, blind date with, yeah. He was from my school and it was so wild. The world is so small. Yeah.
And they really hit it off.
Yeah, it was a good date.
It was a good date.
Yeah.
I was just like really, really shipping that relationship. But yes, that's their boat now.
Correct.
But we're all friends. And it's funny how when people ask us, how did you guys meet? And I'm like, oh, I texted him on Hinge to set him up on a date with Rima.
Just, just normal things.
Do you think I should pivot into matchmaking?
100%. I'm not even joking.
So well,
I think you would, because I think you're also one of those people that just love.
I want people who are meant for each other to be together.
Yeah, I feel like you have the motivation to do it. So in the similar vein of you, when you mentioned that an amber flag is when someone's busy, you don't know how to feel about them not making time for you. I think a green flag for me is when someone proactively just tells me, like lays all the cards on the table and tells me exactly how they feel, even if it's going to hurt my feelings. I just want to know how they feel. And if they are interested in dating me, they are very proactive in making time to date. Right? I think that's a green flag.
Yeah, I think that comes naturally with when they're trying to court you because they're interested and want to get to know you more. I think it's like a natural, yeah. To me, I feel like if they're not doing that, then they don't like me enough.
Yeah, fair. I feel like a lot of people are just like pen pals where they just keep writing to you and they like essays, right? So they're taking time out to do that, but they just want like see you in person.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's the opposite for green flag.
Yeah. Hence the red flag.
I was like, is it red? Is it amber? But yeah, it's not green.
Yeah, for sure. I think it's definitely a green flag, and I think it's an indication of how much they like you or want to get to know you. Another green flag is when they are loved by my friends and my family. I think it's really important that my partner gets along with the people that I love. I think the people I love and my friends and family are obviously some big part of me and a reflection of who I am, right? So the expectation is that the person that I would want in my life is similar in wavelength. And so I think once I see that they can hang out without me being there, I think that is the greenest flag.
Yeah. I think when we first became friends, you were telling me about how an ex joined you on a family trip.
Yeah.
And it was so wild to me.
I know. Your reaction was like, wow, does that happen?
Yeah, you're just dating someone and then you go on family trips and then everybody is comfortable and it's just a good time all around.
Yeah.
That was wild to me.
Yeah. I think that's really important. Like I would go on like dinner dates with his mom without him being there. And then like I also felt comfortable leaving him in a room with my parents without me being there. And I think that's really important because at the end of the day, if you want this to be a long-term partner, right, they're going to have to be in the
you can't monitor them all the time.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think similar to that is that a green flag for me is when a person I'm dating has a lot of healthy relationships with other women. It could be either their sister or other platonic women, like other platonic friendships, or even a really good relationship with their mother.
Right.
I think it's the greenest flag for me when you have close and deep relationships with other women in your life.
No, for sure.
Yeah, I think because when you're surrounded by women, you just become more in tune to issues that women face, so you're more sensitive. So it's like I don't have to explain everything to a person. They have that perspective already,
right,
because they've almost had this sort of shared learning because of the women in their life.
Yeah.
And I think that's really nice that they have that perspective already.
Yep.
And I don't have to educate them on why I feel unsafe sometimes going out at certain times of the night, or stuff like that, or why I feel the need to like send my location to people.
Right.
So yeah, those are some of our amber, red and green flags. Obviously, we didn't cover everything because the list is very long.
The list is very
long. But, oftentimes, especially our mothers, tell us that our standards are too high. I think with standards, you can have certain non-negotiables like we discussed and some things that you'll work around. I think we're also figuring a lot of it out. So I think it's unfair that our mothers think we have high standards.
Well, I think like they live in a different generation in time, right? So I think their expectations are very different.
Yeah.
And so with that, I think there's a little bit of a gap.
Yeah. Okay, well, that's a wrap for this week.
We'll see you in the next one.
Bye.
Bye.